Why would a distributor become a filmmaker? Isn't there more money in film distribution than there is in making movies?
That's a great question, and a lot of my distribution associates thought I was nuts when I went that direction. But filmmaking is about the making of movies. You know, the distribution is a business, and it could be a very lucrative business and fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. But my heart was always, I went into the film business to make movies. And I started in distribution in some ways by accident, because I went to get a production job, and the only job they had available in the company that I got hired into was a sales job in the distribution department. So I figured to get my foot in the door, I would take that job in the hopes of moving over into the production department. I mean, that lasted 22 years. And in hindsight, I learned a ton, and it was super valuable so that I could, you know, be successful in making my own movies and distributing them. But that was only in hindsight. If somebody had come into my office, you know, 6 months into my distribution job and said, hey, we have an opening in production, I would have taken it immediately, because my heart always was in making independent movies. So the truth is, I think the attraction to the film business is making the movies.
But you had gone to law school, you were practicing law, or you just had your JD and you'd come from Canada?
Yeah, so here's how that happened. So when I was in my last year of high school, my father said to me, he said, what do you think you want to do in your life? And I said, I want to make movies. And he said, do you want to produce or direct? And I said, I don't know, what's the difference? And he said, well, producing is all about business. So if you want to produce, you should either get a law degree or a business degree. And if you want to direct, you should go to film school because it's all about art, and you should get a, you know, film degree. And I said, yeah, producing sounds kind of cool. So I did an undergrad in finance and commerce, and then I went to law school with the 100% idea and direction that I was going into the film business to produce. That was the reason I went to law school. I never had any intentions of practicing law unless it was for a studio or something related to film.
So your goal was not to do litigation and you know...
Never. I went to film school with the
Right.
intention of producing movies, because it's a super, you know, valuable skill to have. And now that I've produced 7 movies, I understand how valuable it is. I mean, in law school, I didn't realize how much contract work there is, you know, and how much IP work and that type of thing that there is in making any movie or any type of entertainment content. So it's a great skill to have, like legal skills and financial skills are great also. What I didn't say is that in hindsight, if my father knew that I was actually going to go into the film business and not become a practicing lawyer, he might have given me some different advice. No, it worked out fine. When I was in law school, I spent a lot of time writing screenplays as opposed to studying for legal exams. And I wasn't the best law student, but I was super happy, and it gave me a release. And I actually produced 2 plays, like musicals, with a friend of mine who was in a different division, and he was a musician, and we wrote and produced 2 plays, which we staged. So I got to be very creative during law school, and I think it got me through law school.
Were the screenplays that you wrote based on mock trials or,
So this is sort of a leading question, and it's going to go in a different direction. The reason I wanted to get into the film business, 1, I love movies, but 2, like most filmmakers, I have that one pet project that I had to do in my life. And it was, luckily, I actually got to make it. So it was the first film that I made, and it's called My Brother's Keeper. And my grandfather, when we were growing up, used to sit me and my brothers on his knee and tell us a story about 2 brothers who had to help each other. My grandfather, was from Europe, and big on family and all this type of stuff. So he probably fabricated the story. We never knew if it was real or not. In hindsight, I think it was a fabrication, but it was a great story. And he would tell it to us every Sunday. We would go and sit with him, and he would tell us, and then he used to pay us 25 cents to tell him the story back. So all of his grandchildren knew the story inside and out because it was his legacy. And I decided that I wanted to make a movie of that story. And so that is why I really, really wanted to get in the film business, to make that particular movie. And so when I was in law school, I wrote the script to that movie. And when I graduated from law school, I used that script to send it around to all these production companies to say, hey, either one, would you like to make this movie? Or two, do you have a job? And here's what I can do. I'm a writer, blah, blah, blah. And I got no response like most people do. I'm sure nobody read the script or whatever. And that was, an awakening, which most indie filmmakers get. It opened the door to say, one company said, hey, we see you have a law degree. We don't have a job in production, but you might be useful to us in distribution on the sales side. So I took that job. But I always dreamed of making that movie. And that was my direction and my goal in life. And I left distribution to make that movie, that was my first movie. It's called My Brother's Keeper. I released it 14 years ago, and it was, in 2004. Yeah, so 16 years ago now. And it's my dream. I got to live my dream, which is a wonderful thing in life, in anything you do. But I'm a lucky guy, one, that I had a dream, and two, that I actually got to live it. And that movie, every time I watch it, it brings back that feeling of who I was and what I wanted to do. And like I say, it's a legacy for me and it ends with, a tribute to my grandfather, saying, based on a story that my grandfather told us. And I twisted it around a little. I took the story and the themes and I twisted it around with two different characters, two brothers, and I gave it a little bit of a twist. But I love it.
And the brothers are twins, identical twins?
How did you know? Yeah. So the brothers are identical twins, and in his story, the brothers weren't identical twins. But I happen to be an identical twin, so I thought that would be a really unique twist. So that's the twist I gave to it. But the story wasn't originally like that. So I made it into that because also the relationship between identical twins is super, super unique and very tight. And being an identical twin, I understood it implicitly. I wrote the movie and I produced it, but I didn't direct it because I didn't really have any filmmaking skills. I had a lot of business skills, but not filmmaking. But I did hire a director who was an identical twin because I wanted him to capture those sensitivities, which he did.
Well, I bet was that difficult to find?
Not as difficult as you might think. Especially, I was living in Toronto at the time, and Toronto is a big film hub, and there's a lot of people in the industry. So I put the word out, and there were quite a few, not quite a few, maybe 5 or 6 identical twins who were so-called directors. This guy hadn't made a feature before. He'd made some shorts and some TV commercials, but never a feature. So this was his first feature. We were all a little bit green, but it worked out.
Did you actually quit a job to make it?
So I started off, I had worked primarily for big companies. There's no studios per se in Canada. There's some big media companies, but nothing like, the 5 major studios here, the 6 majors here. So I worked for a very large public media company for most of my career. I switched around between 2 of them. And then I left that media company to start my own company, but it was a distribution company. Because I also have a very entrepreneurial side to me. So I felt that I had learned the business and I left and started my own company. And so I had access and know-how in distribution. And then about 4 to 5 years into owning and operating that company, that's when I said, I'm ready to make this movie. So I still had my own operation, but I switched gears. I had a lot of people in the distribution side who were competent. I still own the company, but I switched gears and I went into the artistic side, the content side. And that's what I did full time. And that's when everybody said, are you nuts? I said, you have the greatest thing going, you have a great lifestyle, you have a successful business. Why are you doing this? And I said, because I also have a dream. And a dream surpasses everything.
I think someone had that same conversation with Jeff Bezos when he said he wanted to pick up and move from wherever, New York City to, he wasn't even sure yet, I think, at the time, he and his wife. And he had this long walk with someone, if I remember the chapter in the book correctly. And they said, what are you doing? So sometimes these different things, they seem crazy to the outside world, whether it was in hindsight worth it. But sometimes people just have to do things.
It wasn't a financially, it wasn't the best financial move, but it was by far the best psychological, emotional, and comforting move in my life by far. I honestly, I consider myself so lucky to be able to be in a position where I could green light my own movie and make it the way I wanted to make it, a feature. I mean, who gets that opportunity? Not too many people. So
Sure.
I'm very fortunate that way.
And it had an emotional component because it was a story that was very close to your heart, and you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. After I made that movie, I felt totally fulfilled. I felt like I had gotten to where I wanted to go in my life, certainly in my career, and then the rest was. It's very comforting to have a goal and to accomplish it and to achieve it. Now, it didn't, it wasn't a financially huge success. It made some money because I was in distribution, so I knew how to monetize it. But I would have made it anyways, even if it wasn't monetizable. I had to make that movie. That was a must for me.